Morning. We're learning Leila Nishmas Mindel Mariam Bas Kalman Ruben her Neshama Shem Aliyah. We are at Kuf Chaf Beis Amud Aleph. We were right before the Mishnah. We had one more statement by Rav Abba Bar Kahana. You see that right before the Mishnah, 122a. Of Amar Rav Abba Bar Kahana. Yeah, see that? Yeah. Okay, so Hitzir Lahem Rabbi Chanina Leveis. So we're just having a couple of statements by Rav Abba Bar Kahana. He's just not a typical. Good morning. Not a typical Amor that you hear from all the time. And so we are going to once again so it's three unrelated statements from him, and this is the third one. Okay, so Amar Rav Abba Bar Kahana Hitzer Lahem Rabbi Chanina Leveis Rabbi Lishtos Yai Mikrono Shel Nachri Bechosam Echad. That Rav Chanina he says Rav Chanina permitted the household of Rebbe to drink wine that was transported by non-Jews with one seal only. Okay, Velo Yadana. So basically there's machlokes elsewhere about how many seals do you need on food that is transported, that is delivered by a non-Jew. Do you need one seal or two seals? Right, so that's a question that's discussed. How many seals do you need in order to ensure that nothing was tampered with when something is brought? Okay, so if you have something transported. So in this case, he reports that Rav Chanina allowed the household of Rebbe to drink wine that was transported, again, handled by non-Jews, with only one seal. I don't know. Is it because he holds like Rabbi Eliezer, who holds that one seal is always sufficient? Or was it unique to this particular case? Rebbe Yehuda, Rebbe was the prince, he was the Nasi, and therefore was a very powerful individual, and therefore maybe specifically over there where there was a deterrent to go ahead and mess with the wine because he was afraid of any consequence with messing with Rebbe Yehuda's the Nasi's house. Maybe that's why he allowed it to go through, and therefore we can't really draw any extrapolate anything from it because we're not really sure. Bottom line is typically we do need two seals, right? Whenever you have anything delivered, it's going to have two seals on it. You buy something, get something on the plane, it's going to have two seals. Tampered with, we typically often don't eat it. So that said, there are scenarios where we will rely on one seal, even no seals, if there is reason to do so. Was it last week? 2 weeks ago? 2 weeks ago, I think. I don't know, whatever. Got a call from OCA. They had a big training, and I got like 5 calls in a row. I'm like, okay, what's going on? And basically, they got a training, and the person who did the training brought them bagels, who he said it was from Goldberg's Bagels, but there was nothing was sealed, and they had all this different stuff, and nothing was sealed. The question was, are they allowed to eat it or not, right? So this was the question they were dealing with. So bottom line is, in such a scenario, you would be, so that's a scenario like that. There's another heter, and that is that if it's a distributor where they have something to gain from selling something which is not kosher, right? So if you're going to buy food from the distributor, then they have something to gain, because if they keep on selling things which are not kosher, it's going to probably, cut a few bucks out of it, and they would end up saving. But over here, this is a typical, like, it's a standard item, meaning it's like a bagel, pizza, something which is not very expensive. We're not something like a roast, like the difference between kosher and non-kosher is probably pretty substantial, I imagine. But a bagel, a pizza, we're talking about maybe 50 cents, whatever it is going to be. So the bottom line is there's very little incentive, like almost no incentive, and it's like a standard item with not a big profit margin. So there would be what's your lie, but do you have it? Whether would be what's your lie in such a scenario? So if anyone sends to OCA, all your teachers just say treif. No, just kidding. It's called, but there's what's your lie upon, and that would be totally fine, because in that particular scenario, there's no benefits to do it. But typically we do want to rely on two seals, but there are, like this scenario, either one seal or even less, where there is what's rely upon to go ahead and do so. Okay, good. Now we're back to Amir al-Nachri. Unfortunately, not so much. Fine. Amir al-Nachri, we're going to learn some principles, many different applications to Amir al-Nachri, but let's jump in. So Nachri, here's the mission. Nachri shidlik is an air, a non-Jew who lit a candle for himself. Mishtamish l'or Yisrael, a Jew is allowed to use that light, right? So anything that a non-Jew does for himself, then you're allowed to benefit from it, right? The whole issue with Amir al-Nachri, or not even Amir al-Nachri, is that is a non-Jew doing something for you is problematic. If the non-Jew does something for himself, then you're allowed to benefit from it. Okay, v'im b'shvil Yisrael aser, right? If it was done for a Jew, then that can't be. Then the Jew is not allowed to benefit from it. Milu mayim lashkos behemto. If a non-Jew draws water to water his own animal, mashka achar Yisrael, a Jew is allowed to use the water after him. Okay, v'im b'shvil Yisrael. But if it was done for a Jew, then he's not allowed to do so. Asa nachri kevash leiribo. If a non-Jew makes a plank to go off of a ship, then Yored Achar Yisrael, then a Jew is allowed to get off the ship after him because the plank was made by the non-Jew. Vim Bishov Yisrael Aser, but if it was made for a Jew, then it can't be done. Maisa, we have a story. Rabbi Gamliel is Kedim Shayabam Bisvina, that Rabbi Gamliel and the elders were arriving on a ship. Now we have to, the Mefarshim points out the ship before Shabbos had to already be within the tchum. If it was not within the tchum, then they would not be allowed to get off the ship. But you have to. We're talking about a case where it was already pretty close to the dock, but it wasn't fully there, and it was close enough. And they come to the dock. Okay, so there's no tchum issue because it was already within 2,000 amos of the city. Vasa nachri kevesh lerbo, and one of the non-Jews made a plank to get off of the boat. The Yerdubar was a Canaan and the elders got off the boat after them using that same plank. Okay, now the Gemara is going to be bothered to try to address why we need three different cases. They're all basically saying the same thing. If it was done for a Jew, not allowed. If it was done for the non-Jew, it's allowed. Why do you need three cases, right? The case of the fire, the case of the water, and the case of the plank. Just say it once, right? We're basically able to learn the same principle from all of those. The Gemara says no. We need each of these cases. If it would be teaching us the case of a lamp, mishum to ner le'echad, ner le'mea, because a lamp, there is no difference between 1 and 100. In other words, if I'm lighting a lamp's going to be sufficient for the non-Jew, and the same lamp could be used for many. In other words, I'm not going to do anything different whatsoever for a lamp. I'm lighting a candle, or I'm not lighting a candle. Once I light a candle, if I turn the lights on over here, it's good for everyone, right? There's no adding. When it comes to drawing water, maybe there it should not be allowed because there's a concern that when it comes to water, it's not the same amount of water that's drawn for one as it is for two, right? There's a possibility I'm going to drink more water. I'm going to take more water, and therefore, even when he's doing it for himself, even the non-Jew is doing it for himself, since with water you're going to potentially need more to feed more than just one animal. Therefore, maybe I should make a decree that the non-Jew that you shouldn't be allowed to draw the water because there you can't say one candle illuminates for one as it does for 100 people. Okay, so therefore you have to have that case as well. The chevesh lamali and water need the case of the plank. There's nothing really novel other than the story, and that's why we mentioned the case of the plank just to be a segue to bring us the story. Okay, so basically the novelty over here is it's not only in a case where there's absolutely nothing extra being done by the non-Jew, like the candle, turning on the lights, it's the same light. But even in a case where they're going to be bringing something which could theoretically, if they would be doing it for a Jew, they would have to be doing more, and therefore maybe I should make a decree in that case. I don't have to worry as long as they're doing it for themselves, even though it's something which it gets consumed, meaning it's water, and therefore there's a little bit of water, there's a lot of water, but nonetheless, I'm going to have to go ahead and nonetheless, it's going to be permitted. Okay, Tanar Banan. We have a brisa. Another application of Amir Nachri Shaliket Asavim, a non-Jew who gathers grass for his animal. Machel Acharav Yisrael. A Jew's allowed to feed his animal after him, right? So a non-Jew goes ahead and gathers grass. A Jew's allowed to feed his animal after him. Vim Bishvel Yisrael Aser. But if the grass was gathered for the Jew, then they can't be used. Okay? Mile Mayim Lashkos Behemto. If the non-Jew draws water to water his animal, Mashka Acharav Yisrael. Again, the Jew's allowed to drink water, cause his animal to drink after him. Vim Bishvel Yisrael Aser. But if it was done for a Jew, it cannot be done. B'medvar murim. When is this also? She'ein makiro, where the non-Jew does not know the Jew. Okay, we're going to have a makiro, but if the non-Jew knows the Jew, even if it wasn't done deliberately for him, if he knows him, you can't benefit from his actions. Okay, so here we have a bit of a chumrah we're going to unpack in a moment. But as long as the non-Jew, not only if the non-Jew does it for the Jew, is it problematic, but even if the non-Jew knows the Jew, it's also going to be problematic. Okay, we'll see what the applications are in a moment. Ask the Gemara about the grass. Eini, Vamra, is this so? Vamra Rav Huna, Amar Vahamar, Rav Huna, Amar Rav Chanina, Mamid Adam Behemta Al Gabe Asam B'Shabbos, Avalo Al Gabe Muksa B'Shabbos. Okay, so the Gemara is getting into a bit of a technical piece over here, and that is that the Mishnah told us that you are allowed to, that the non-Jew gathers grass. That means he's pulling out grass that is food for the animal, and he puts it down in front of the animal, and that grass would typically be called muksa, right? Because it wasn't designated for feed before it was attached to the ground. So if it's attached to the ground, it's not designated for feed, and therefore it's going to be muksa. And nonetheless, the Mishnah said, the Brisa said, you're allowed to use that to feed the animals. The Gemara says, you're allowed to stand your animal over attached grass on Shabbos, okay? Lo agabe muksa b'Shabbos. But you can't give it muksa grass. You can't have grass that was not designated for the animal before Shabbos. You can't give it that grass to eat. Okay, why not? Why not? The difference is like this. If it's, what's the concern over here? The concern is, there's two issues. If it's attached, what's the concern? I'm going to go ahead and detach it, right? But that is doraisa. We're not concerned you're going to go ahead and do something doraisa for your animal, and therefore you're allowed to bring your animal to grass which is attached and allow it to eat it, because we're not concerned that you're going to go ahead and detach it, because to go ahead and do a doraisa, we're not concerned. But what you cannot do is bring it to grass which is detached already, but it's just muksa. Because if it's just muksa, it's derabanan. And there we're concerned, not going to be so careful about muksa, and you're going to start picking it up. So our Mishnah Brisa though told us that you are allowed to go ahead and feed your animal grass, which is seemingly muksa, grass which was not designated for the animal. So the Gemara says no. We're not talking about a case where your mom is standing on top of it and forcing it to eat the food. You're just standing like blocking it into a general area. You're not standing next to the animal. If you're not standing next to the animal, that decree of not feeding your animal muksa food does not apply. Okay, fine. That's a detail. Okay, let's go a little bit further into this discussion of knowing the person, not knowing the person. Amar Mar. So it was said in the Brisa above, the Brisa said that when the non-Jew does not know the Jew, then you're allowed to benefit from the things he just did. But if he does know the Jew, then you're not allowed to benefit. Ask the Gemara, the Mishnah just told us a case where there was a bunch of people on a ship together. Okay, that means they're all together, right? It's a boat. It's not like a cruise ship nowadays. There's like 4 million people. You don't know anyone. It's a boat. They all know each other. They all know who's on the boat. And the non-Jew goes ahead and makes a plank. And what the Mishnah say, that Ram Gamliel and the elders went off on that plank. So that means they knew each other, right? So we're going to see two answers with different ramifications. La halacha. Amar Abaye, shelo b'fanav haya. So when Gamliel says it was done, so it's true, he knew him, but it was done not in front of him. So new halacha, and that is that even if the non-Jew knows the Jew, but it's done not in front of him, that's already enough of a distinction. So again, non-Jew's doing it for himself, and he's not doing it in front of the Jew. Rabbi says in that case you're allowed to benefit from it. Okay, Rava Amar, different answer. Afilu tema befanav, even if it was done in front of him, ner le'echa ner le'mea. It's different. In a situation, the difference is that in a situation where it's a one action which is going to be as relevant to many as it is to one, like a candle or like a plank. Those cases, even if he knows you, it doesn't matter. So Rav is making a different distinction. Rav is saying, when it comes to grass, to water, if he knows you, then it's problematic because we're afraid he's going to go ahead and bring more for you. He's going to go ahead and bring more water for you. He's going to bring more grass. But in a situation where he's doing it for himself, even if he knows you, but the action is an action where there's only one action that's relevant. In other words, turning on a light, there's turning on what? You turn on the lights. If there's 10 people in here or one person in here or 100 people in here, you're still turning on the same lights. If there's making a plank, if there's one person or 100 people, you're still making one plank. Where those cases, says Rava, that those cases, even if he knows you, are okay. The cases where if he knows you, it's problematic, is in a situation like peeling the grass or getting water. There we say, even if he does it for himself, but if he knows you, you can't benefit from it because there's a concern that one time he may go ahead and do extra for you. Right? You see the difference? Because there's going to be more actions. Whereas turning on the lights or making a plank, there's only one action. You don't do more actions because there's more people. Yeah. Yeah, it'll be even one person, right? In other words, there's no problem. Again, we're talking about a case where he's doing it for himself, but the point is that since it's one action that would be relevant for 1 or 2 or 3 or 100, it doesn't matter. Ner le'echa ner le'mea means if the action I would do is the same for one person as it is for 100 people. Making a plank, you make one plank, okay, more people, you don't do extra actions because of the Jew. Those cases are going to be permitted if he does it for himself, okay? Which is how we paskin. Okay, Meisei. Now we ask a question on Rava's approach because there's a brisa which has a slightly more detailed version. Rav Gamliel in this brisa says, since it was done not in front of us, therefore we could go down, which seems very clearly like Abaye. Abaye says the whole reason it's allowed is not because it's ner le'echa ner le'mea, it's one action which is relevant for one as the same for 100, but rather it says explicitly that the reason it's allowed is because the fact it was done not in front of us. So Eima, the Gemara says, no, we could reinterpret those words, hovaso nerbo. Since he made it, okay, meaning he didn't do anything extra for us, therefore we're allowed to go down. Bottom line is the brisa itself is not a stira to Rava's approach, and again, that is how we paskin, that if a non-Jew does something, and he does it for himself, and it's something which doesn't, and it's something where there would be nothing extra for more people, then we're allowed. Then a Jew's allowed to benefit from it as well. So again, if a non-Jew comes into a room, this happens. You have let's say you have cleaning help or whatever it is, and they come into a room and they want to read a book, they want to do something, and they turn on the light for themselves. Right? So even though they know you, they didn't do it explicitly for you, they know you, they're working for you. Bottom line is, as long as they're doing it for themselves, you could benefit from it. Since there's nothing extra they would have to do if you were to walk in the room, there's no gzeros, you could totally benefit from it. Yeah.
Like the elevator.
Yeah. Assuming there's no issue of like extra energy, let's assume that's not an issue, which is machlokas. But yeah, that would be 100% fine since they're pressing one button, right? That'd be a good example where they're pressing one button, and therefore, you're allowed to.
It have to be going in the elevator themselves. It can't be someone like a doorman, for instance.
Correct. Then they're doing it for you, right? But if you're going in, right. Right, if they're going in, right, then that's you go in. It's a little. there's a Jewish comedian who used to like give a whole like he became like about tshuva. He used to take a whole talk of like when he's first becoming from and like he was just learning the halachos. Like he goes into the elevator and like some woman comes in. He's just like sitting there and she's like, "Oh, what floor can I press?" He's like, "Whatever floor you're going to." So you got to be careful when you do that. But the bottom line is that since they're doing it for themselves and it's one button. You same floor 5 as it is for one person, is for two people. Yeah, it's a great example. Yeah. Tashma. Okay, Brisa. Let's say you have a city who is with both Jews and non-Jews. And there's a bathhouse that operates on Shabbos. Okay, so again, it's owned by non-Jews, and it's a city which has both Jews and non-Jews. Imrov Nachrim, if the majority of the people in the city or the majority of the people who use the bathhouse are non-Jews, mutter lichotz b'miyad. Then immediately after Shabbos, you'd be allowed to benefit from it. Okay, because the action that was done was the heating up of the bathhouse was done for the non-Jews. In Rov Yisrael, the majority of the users are Jews. Yam t'michdei shichamu cham, and then you have to wait the amount of time it would take for the water to heat up. Right. The concept of yachmu, I'm not sure. We could be. Okay, so basically, the basic principle is that the bathhouse is owned by a non-Jew. If the majority of the people in the city are Jews, then you have to wait after Shabbos, and they're heating it up constantly. You'd have to wait after Shabbos, the extra hour or whatever it would take for the bathhouse to heat up. So this is a question really on both approaches, because the bathhouse is being heated up all the time. Okay, and heating up the bathhouse, do you do it extra if there's more people or less people? No, you heat up the water. You don't say, how many people are swimming in the pool today? One person, I'll heat it up this much. 10 people, heat it more. No, you heat it up the same amount to make sure it gets to a certain temperature. And it's done, no one's watching. Right? So it's a question both on Abaya and Rava. Right? Because according to both of them, it should be permitted right away. Why do you have to wait? Why do you have to wait extra? So the Gemara says, Hasam ki mechami, there, if it's a majority of Jews, then the assumption is a daitz Jew mechame. Even though the Jews aren't there, you know that they're doing it for you. In other words, if it's a majority of Jews there, you know they're doing it for you, and therefore you have to wait after Shabbos. But again, so what comes out though, if it's not a majority of Jews, then it is permitted to use it right after Shabbos. The reason you have to go after Shabbos is because you don't go to bathhouse on Shabbos. But if let's say it would be something good, a very good example, if you go to like a hotel or something on Shabbos, and they're making coffee, right? They make coffee, and 98% of the people there are non-Jewish. You're 100% allowed to have coffee from that urn or hot water from that urn on Shabbos because they're doing it for the majority of people. The majority of people are non-Jews, and therefore you're allowed to benefit from it, right? Even on Shabbos, because turning the thing there's no chil Shabbos, and therefore you're allowed to make yourself a coffee using that hot water. Okay, good. Tashma. Ner daluk b'msiba. Similar type of case. You have a lamp lit at a gathering. Imrov nachrim mutal shamas ora. If the majority of the people are non-Jews, then you're allowed to benefit from the light. Im rov Yisrael aser. If it's mostly Jews, then you can't. Mechza aser. If it's half and half, then it's forbidden. So basically, again, the same issue. The lights were lit not in front of the Jews, and one lighting is enough for one as it is for 100. So there's a question both on Abaye and Rav. According to both of them, it should be permitted based on their principles. Abaye because of the fact that it was done not in front of you. A Rava because of the fact that ner le'echa ner le'meya. One light is for one is for many. So the Gemara says also hasam nami ki madleke or adait druba madleke. When it's lit for the majority in mind, and therefore it's allowed. Okay. Shmuel ikla levei avin torin. Shmuel once visited the house of Avin of Toran. Asahu nachri alik shraga. A non-Jew came by and lit a lamp. Adrina Shmuel ape. Shmuel turned his face away, right, because he didn't want to benefit from the light. The Gemara says came in the chazia the aite shtar v'kakar. Once he saw the non-Jew came and brought a newspaper, a document, started reading for himself. Amar, I died to nafshehu. Oh, he's doing it for himself. Adrinu iul ape gabe shraga, and therefore he turned his face back and benefited from the light, and therefore he was able to use the light. Hanulach kol kisvei. Okay, we finished the parak. The Gemara doesn't go into so much more detail about Amir Lanachri, but there are many details that are both unique to a public space. like a shul. There's two, they're very important heterim which are discussed in the poskim. One is tzorach rabim, if it's needed for the masses, tzorach gadol needed for a great need, or tzorach mitzvah for a mitzvah. Then there are poskim who are meko. It's a big discussion, but there is much more leniency in a public space, in a place where it's going to be for mitzvah, about asking a non-Jew even directly, as opposed to a private space. So it's important. We really probably should have like a full-fledged class about like what could be done in a shul, and should not be extrapolated. Whatever is being done in a shul is not the same as what's being done in a home, because a shul has a whole different allowance, because the fact that it's for the masses, meaning changing the AC on back and forth on whatever on Shabbos. Can't do that at home. Can't do that at home, right? And at home, if a person's very, very cold, right? There's a concept that a person then there's a concept that for sickness, for illness, you're allowed to do so. If it's very cold, we consider everyone to be, the Gemara uses the term that everyone, when it comes to cold, then that's like something which could affect everyone's health. And therefore, if it's like freezing, you could have a non-Jew like fix things and make things warm in your house. But in a shul, there is allowance. Again, not everyone relies on this, but there are poskim who are lenient about the fact that it's l'tzorach rabim, it's for the masses, and l'tzorach mitzvah, to enable a mitzvah, and therefore, to go ahead and have a non-Jew adjust the temperature is allowed in your house. If you're uncomfortable, too bad. You got to deal with it, unless it's freezing, right? But unless it's freezing, you just got to deal with the uncomfortable temperature, and that's that. The same with lights, right? But bottom line is fine. So it's just important to recognize there's a major distinction between shuls and homes. But those are okay. So we have some general principles that we learned over here, but there are many more principles. The general principles we learned is that if he's doing it for himself, it's allowed. If he's doing it for you, even if you don't ask him, or if you ask him before Shabbos, it'd still be usher, right? If a non-Jew comes into a room and sees you sitting in the dark and says, "Oh, you're sitting in the dark, I want to help you," turns on the lights, usher, you got to leave the room. You cannot benefit from that light even after the fact, right? So those are just some pieces we're not allowed, and then important to know. And just again to simply go ahead and hint, for the most part, is going to be forbidden on Shabbos, Yom Tov as well. And okay, I guess we'll stop over here. Have a great day.